So you've taken a DNA test with 23andMe, and now you want to understand what all this information they've given you is about. Well, let me go through a basic introduction to 23andMe and the information you can find on their website. Howdy, I'm Andy Lee with Family History Fanatics, and this is a segment of DNA. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and click on that bell if you want to be notified about upcoming episodes. 23andMe was one of the first companies to offer an autosomal test to the public. Their website is chock full of information, and it can be very overwhelming to somebody who's just getting into genetic genealogy. So let me go through some of the information you're going to find and what it means and how you might be able to use a little bit of it so that you can help progress your genetic genealogy research. So right when you log in to 23andMe, you're going to be taken to your home page here, and I'll be honest, they completely bombard you with lots of information. There is something really for everybody. Take the time to go through and just click through everything to see what all is being offered. Now, I've taken a test with the health and the ancestry, so I may have access to some more information that you don't have access to, but let me take you through the information that you might find available to you. At the top here we have the menu bar, and this is always going to be there to help you navigate to different places on the 23andMe website. The first one is Ancestry, and we'll just go to the overview to take a look at what we have. Ancestry composition is what 23andMe calls their ethnicity results or their heritage results. And so there's a little graphic here of where my ancestors are from that's color coded. As I scroll down, it's going to give me the British and Irish, French, German, or Scandinavian. It also tells me a little bit about my relatives and how much DNA I share with other relatives. There is a quick little bit about Neanderthal ancestry, and then also some about my maternal and my paternal haplogroups. And each one of these are something that you can view. Let's go look at the maternal haplogroup. Now, 23andMe, in their test, they test some of your mitochondrial DNA to come up with your maternal haplogroup. And if you have a Y chromosome, they'll also tell you what your paternal haplogroup is. So my maternal haplogroup is K1A3A, which if you just said that probably means nothing, and it really doesn't mean anything to me. But if you want to learn more, there's plenty of information that they're going to be able to tell you about that haplogroup. So if we start off at the migration, it's going to go all the way back really to the dawn of modern human civilization, about 180,000 years ago. And that's with haplogroup L. And we can see that there was a little journey of L to L3 to N to R to U to K all throughout the Middle East and East African area. Now, more importantly, K1A3A shows that it is 9,000 years old. So even if I shared that maternal haplogroup with somebody else, there's a really good chance that they are not related to me with any kind of genealogical time frame. This could go back thousands of years. Now, as with almost all their pages, there's usually another link called Scientific Details. They've gone and they've broken down a lot of the information into easy to understand on the first page. If you click on the scientific details of almost any of these things, it's going to go into a lot more detail. It's going to have links to papers that you may be interested in reading about, and if you're not interested in that, it's okay. What they've done is they've given you that information there so that if you want to dig deeper, you can dig deeper. Now, your paternal haplogroup is going to be about the same as the maternal haplogroup, so I'm just going to skip that, and we're going to go right over to the Neanderthal ancestry. Now, one of the cool things that has been discovered is that modern humans have some variants that originated with Neanderthals, and depending on where your ancestry is from will determine how much of that is. Those with European ancestry tend to have the most Neanderthal variants. And so I have 292 Neanderthal variants, which is more than 76% of 23andMe customers. Now, if I scroll down, I'm going to see all of my people that I'm sharing DNA with on 23andMe and how much Neanderthal ancestry they have. But if I want to learn more, again, I can click on the scientific details and actually see and understand more about how they've come up with this calculation of how many Neanderthal variants I have. In this scientific detail section of Neanderthal, there's actually a couple of really cool things. First off, here's a map of my chromosomes, and it shows where every single one of those Neanderthal variants are, all 292 of them. And you can see they're all throughout all 22 of my chromosomes. Now, from all those variants, I have one variant that actually is attributable to a trait, and that is for height. And this variant, if I look under the biological explanation, it says that it's associated with being about 0.1 inches taller. Not 1 inch taller, but 0.1 inches taller. So I'm not going to be dunking any basketballs just because I have this Neanderthal variant. Neanderthal ancestry is something that only 23andMe reports, so it's a good thing to test with 23andMe if you're interested in learning how much of those variants you might have in your genome. But let's go over to ancestry composition and learn a little bit more about how they report on ethnicity. Now, one thing to remember with any of these ethnicity results is they're based on a reference population and an algorithm that calculates how similar your DNA is to the different reference populations. Now, as more people are tested, those reference populations increase. As companies reevaluate their algorithm, they may change that calculation, and so you should always expect to see changes in your ethnicity over time. Now, it's not going to be a day-to-day change, but maybe every year or every 6 months there may be an update. And so just because it's showing something right now, in 6 months or a year or 5 years from now, that ethnicity may be slightly different. Now, looking at mine, I can see that I am almost completely European. You can see here it is 99.7% of what my ancestry is European. And that's what I know from my genealogy for the most part as well. Now, they break it down into different areas and different regions even in those areas. But again, because as we get to smaller and smaller regions, those reference populations are going to be based on less and less people, I wouldn't take it as gospel truth that each one of these regions you absolutely have to have ancestors from. Now, from a continental level, from like the European or Asian or African or North American ancestry, yeah, if it tells you that you have ancestry from there in a broad amount, let's say more than 5%, then you should have some ancestors that you can find on a genealogical research that are from that area. But once we get down into these smaller amounts, like you can see here, Eastern European 1%, Southern Europe 0.2%, those may just actually be statistical noise. It may just be something that is an artifact of some similar DNA from Europe overall that happens to just look like that and not actually represent my ancestry from that area. Now, as I scroll further down, they have an ancestry timeline, and based on how much ancestry you have, they make an estimate of how far back you'd have to go to find an ancestor from that area. So, for instance, they have me with a British or Irish ancestor between 1890 and 1950. I actually have my great-grandfather that immigrated to the United States from England in 1912. Then they have a French-German from 1860 to 1920. I actually have my great-grandmother who married that great-grandfather, whose mother was from Germany, and she immigrated over in 1880, I believe it was. So in that case, those represent actual, places that I can confirm on my family tree. And so you can use some of these as clues if you don't know anything about your family tree. But once it gets into some of these others, Scandinavian, Eastern European, South Asian, those were all trace amounts, those really small 1% or less. I have not actually found any relatives from Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, or South Asia in these time frames from my genealogical research. Now, my tree is not completely full in this area, but for the most part, these probably are just some statistical noise as opposed to representing people that are actually in my tree. If you have had your parents tested, now I have, I've had both my father and my mother, one of the great things that 23andMe does is it actually breaks out your ethnicity into which part you got from your mother and which part you got from your father. Now, this is neat because it shows where some of these small discrepancies might be. So for instance, I had 0.3% South Asian. My father also has 0.3% South Asian. So if I was really curious whether this was real or not, then that would be a clue of where I need to be looking. I need to look on my father's side far back to see where I might have had some of that South Asian ancestry, if that was in fact real. And one of the things that I like most is the chromosome painting. And this is actually the reason why I tested with 23andMe in the first place, was because I wanted this beautiful picture of what my chromosomes looked like. Now again, since I am almost 100% European, you see mainly blue here on the color. There is that little bit of South Asian there on chromosome number 3, and you can see some tealish, Eastern European there on chromosome number 1. But for the most part, mine is different shades of dark and light blue representing different parts of Europe. I can change the confidence level from speculative, which is trying to assign every single little bit of your DNA, all the way up to, hey, very conservative. And you can see that this changed quite a bit. A lot of things went to broadly European as opposed to some more specifics. It has the British and Irish, and then it has broadly Northwestern European, which included all that German and French in there as well. And of course, I can change things in between as well, which is going to just change what the overall look of my DNA might be. And again, there is the link to the scientific details at the top, as well as some frequently asked questions if you have some more questions about your ancestry. The next thing, if you have ordered the Health and Ancestry Kit, is you can go over to the health area and see what information you can find out about your health based off of your genetics. Now, a lot of this stuff is based on research, and the one thing to remember about most of these reports is that a lot of things are not based just on genetics, but they also have an environmental component as well. And there's really a couple of different areas of this. There are the traits, and there are the different medical things, and those can be seen here with the traits being things like your hair color, your eye color, as well as everything else, which is the medical. So the carrier status, the health predisposition, and the wellness. And there's multiple reports on each one. So let me go into the traits just to show you what some of these different reports are. So here are their traits, and they cover lots of different things: back hair, bald spot, cheek dimples, earlobe type, eye color, freckles, hair texture, misophonia, newborn hair, red hair, stretch marks, unibrow, widow's peak. And it tells me what is more likely for me based off of my genetics. Now, if I click on any one of these, let's look at the cleft chin. It's going to tell me a little bit about the cleft chin. And so, for instance, it says, hey, based on my genetics, I'm unlikely to have a cleft chin. And this is where I want to emphasize that you should always be not necessarily skeptical, but you should always be questioning or thinking about, well, is there just this genetic component, or is there other components as well? So for instance, based on research, they found some genetic markers that indicate people that are going to have a cleft chin or not have a cleft chin. And in my case, those genetic markers, 83% of people that have those same markers don't have a cleft chin. 17% of people do have a cleft chin. So there's probably either some other markers that they have just not found associated with that, or there's some other environmental factors that determine whether you get a cleft chin or not. If you go into the scientific details, you can find which of those markers they're talking about. You can learn more about each one of these traits. Now let me go over to one of the medical ones, which we'll call it the health predisposition reports. And here's one: an age-related macular degeneration. It says that I have a slightly increased risk of age-related macular degeneration. There's 2 variants that are detected that I have, and as I scroll down, I can learn some more information about this. Now, right up front, they tell you that, hey, this does not test for all of the different variants. There are other variants as well, and as you look down, they also identify some other areas, some lifestyle factors that can affect this as well. So it's not just a genetic component. In this case, there are other factors. And in mine, there's, let's see here, smoking, age, family history, ethnicity, and diet. So I can click on each one of these and I can learn a little bit more about how those all affect that age-related macular degeneration. Once again, 23andMe provides lots of information that if you want to delve into something, then you can do that. And this would actually be great, I think, for a science project for some middle school or high school kids, is to go into detail on some of these things and see what information they could use to create a science project. Now, the next part of this is their research part. One of the things that 23andMe was actually based on is gathering a large pool of DNA with some information so that it can be used for research, and it's been used for a lot of different studies. On this page, you can go and you can actually take these different surveys, and these surveys are not big, long things. Most of them are just a few questions or even just one question, and so you don't have to sit down and plan an hour to answer hundreds of questions. You can just do a couple of questions a day based off of what time you have, and that is going to help add some information to the 23andMe database that can be used by scientists in their different studies. Well, what's great about this is if you want to see what difference you might have made or whether you have actually contributed, is scroll down and where it says see all publications. You want to click on that, and it is now going to provide you a list of the publications that basically your DNA, along with thousands or even millions of other people's DNA, was a part of. And so you can scroll down and you can see all these different reports. There's 63 different published discoveries that my DNA was a part of. So up to now, I've been talking about the health and the research and the ethnicity results, but when it comes to genealogy, the family and friends section is where you want to be. Now, in the family and friends section, there are some different areas. So let's go over each one of them separately. First off is the grand tree. Now, the grand tree is just a simple way that if you have parents or grandparents that have tested as well, then you can link them up and be able to see what traits you received from different people. So let me set this up real quick and show you how that can be done. So here I am on the grand tree, and I've put in my mom, my dad, and my grandparents who have tested with 23andMe also. And what I've done is I've selected the bald spot. Now, it's showing from the bald spot that I got 0% of the DNA for that from my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, and I got 50% of it from my paternal grandmother. And then I got the other 50% of it from my mom's side of the family. I can go and I can click on each one of these and actually see what percentage I got from each one. So here is the one for freckles. And you can see I actually got a part of it from both my paternal grandfather and my paternal grandmother. So 29.4% and 20.6%. So each trait, depending on what variants there are and how you might have gotten them, you can actually see where you might have gotten those traits if you have your grandparents tested as well. Next, let's go to the DNA relatives, and this is what is commonly called your match list. These are the people that you share DNA with. So as I'm on this page, I can actually see that I have all the close people that are related to me are ones that I've tested for my family members, parents, siblings, children. I also have some cousins that have tested. And once it gets that, it's going to show some other information. Now, there is some key information you can see just by looking at this match list. For instance, it's going to tell you what the estimated relationship is. So for instance, a first to second cousin or a second cousin. It's also going to tell you the amount of shared DNA, what percentage of DNA. If you have your mother or your father tested, it's going to tell you whether this matches on your mother's side or your father's side. And it's going to also tell you how many segments of DNA are shared, all with that person. There are also some filters here at the left-hand side that you can use to search your matches for particular surnames, for just looking at your mother or your father's side, or ancestral birthplaces, depending on whether people have put that information in. This is a good place to start when you're trying to find relatives on a particular line to see, do you have any DNA matches that match with that line? So if you click on any one of those matches, then you will get the information about that specific match. So for instance, here it's going to show that my genetic relationship is about a third cousin on my mother's side, and it gives a little map of how we might be related in that way. That's just, again, something to use as a clue to start some more research into how you may be related to this person. If both of us have put in where our background is, then it will show some information here as far as what surnames or birthplaces of our ancestors are. It'll also show a comparison of our ethnicity results and then of our haplogroups. And at the bottom, you're going to see the relatives you have in common. In other words, a shared match list. These are people that both of us share DNA with. Now, some of this may be people that we share a lot of DNA with and the other person shares just a little bit. Others may be ones that we share a little bit and others share a lot. But these are people that we share DNA in common. And finally, at the bottom, you can put any notes that you have about your research, that you've contacted this person or found out how they're related specifically to you. That's available there for you. So there's lots of different tools here that you can use to help you with your genealogy research. Now, I'm not going to go into the chromosome browser and the different way of looking at segments because those are going to be covered under other videos, but this is just a basic start to where you can find certain information that's related to genealogy. So this was just a quick introduction to 23andMe and some of the basic information you can find on there. Be sure, if you have not gone into 23andMe in a while, that you go and check out to see what new things are there. And if you have any questions about 23andMe, you can put it in the comments below and I'll try to answer it. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with all your friends.